You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation. The place where stars and minds align.
Peace, you're now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humble host, Herut, and I got the master astrologer, Brother Ra. How you doing?
Oh, brother, never better. How about yourself, King?
Pretty good. Just busy as all get out, trying to put some things together or whatnot. What's been keeping you up lately?
Man, just constantly everyday grind. Trying to get things to meet in the middle and trying to get people's information out to them as soon as possible. So, brother stays busy. Stay busy, but it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being able to have an opportunity to see into the destinies and lives of individuals that you know nothing about, and it always rings true. So I'll never shun a gift like that. So I say it's always good.
Indeed. Now, before we go any further, I want to remind you all that this episode is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group and Calibrusha Astrology. You can find Push It Forward Media Group at Push It Forward. That's PUSHITFWD, and that's on Instagram. So go ahead and follow us and hit us up and check out everything we got up there. We also have the website pushitforward.com. It's spelled just like the Instagram, PUSHITFWD.com. Up there we got a lot of video content. We got short films coming, different things like that. So go check us out on there and on YouTube. And Brother Rod, tell us how to get in touch with you and Calibrusha Astrology.
Calibrusha Astrology at gmail.com. You can hit me up on there. You can also hit me up on Facebook at Shechem Ra on Facebook, and then also Shechem Ra on IG as well. So either one of those three, definitely you'll get a hold of me. And I do apologize sometimes. My brother just gets tied up, busy, so I don't get right back with you. Just hit me up on one of the other means or one of the other avenues, and one of them will cross my path. So I try to check them pretty periodically, but of course some things just slip through the cracks. So if you don't get me on one media format, try another.
Indeed. So yeah. Oh, and yeah. Also, follow us at Cosmic Convo on Instagram. That's where we're at on Instagram. We do monitor the not the email, but the direct, the DMs, and we do comment back and engage and stuff like that. A lot of inspiration for some of the topics come from there. So definitely hit us up on there. We do respond. All right. Coming off of last week's show, another show that I would put in our practical series. Our listeners seem to be pretty happy with that one. How you feel about last week's show?
Man, every show to me is, it even elucidates things when I go back and listen to it. I'm a fan, so the beauty of it is that when I listen to the podcast myself, I really have the ability to enjoy the information, even though it's coming through me, right? I'm still a listener, and I'm still I have the ability to really appreciate what other people are getting out of the podcast. So the last one to me was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it seems that they're getting to that level where, each one is kind of like, when's the next one? I'm waiting on the next one. So
Yeah.
the last one was really enjoyable, brother. I really liked it.
Cool. All right. So yeah, we can go in today's topic, and this is kind of this is one of our, a listener or listeners inspired episode. We've got a lot of comments about Nakshatras, a lot of questions and different things like that. There's a lot of people who just really is not familiar with the concept, or they may be coming from another form of astrology and not really familiar with the the nakshatra form of distinction in astrology and stuff like that. So this show we're gonna just expound on the topic, and for those who are not familiar with what, don't even know what I'm talking about right now, Brother Roy, how would you kind of enter the conversation of nakshatras?
I would venture to ask some questions, just some basic underlying fundamental questions about what differentiates one person from another, right? A lot of the things about astrology is that it's a very refined science and art. It's all about refinement. It's all about the details, the very specific points and pieces of a puzzle that really make that really make the differences, that really speak to the nuances. And so, I would ask, is anyone that's born as, let's say, between, let's say the 16th or 17th, let's say the 17th of August to the 16th of September, every Leo is Leo, right? I'm just thinking about the sun sign in general, right? And if you notice, someone that's born within the same, let's say zodiac sign, has some very fundamental differences, and really not even just fundamental, just broad differences between two different types, or let's say just saying two different people that are both the same sign. So I would just question that and say, well, so this person's a Leo, this person's a Leo, but they have some very different soul qualities, because that's what the sun is, some soul qualities, people going in different directions. Why does that Leo go in this direction and then this Leo goes in a seemingly completely different direction?
Yeah.
And of course the other things come into play, like the ascendant and the moon and all the other planets and so forth. Those all come into play. But just to give it to the layman, to ask a layman, what would be the difference, and are all Leos the same? And so that would begin to spark a conversation that we would venture to travel down to establish why those differences are there, right? Why a Leo that's born August 17th would be different from one that's born September 1st.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that will be where we would venture off into and really explore, the science and why it's so important to notice the small details, the real minutia of something. And this science has a vastness to it that's almost daunting when you consider the task of trying to learn it. You know what I mean? I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm sure our followers can agree as well that is daunting. It really is. It's a task that can't be mastered in one lifetime. It just can't be. Just from all the different systems, different types, different approaches, different cosmological backgrounds. That's one thing that people don't get. As when you study astrology, you should have a very strong training and knowledge of cosmologics, of cosmogony, of different forms of how the universe unfolds itself. And there's different cosmogonies, all kinds of different cosmogonies throughout the world. But that's where the real study of astrology begins, is through cosmogony. And that will teach you a lot of how to understand the whys of astrology, not the whats,
Yeah.
But, that's where we definitely will begin the conversation. But get into nakshatras, which is the topic of today's show. We're going to explore, just to give the people some understanding of what it is, right? And why it works the way it works. So back to, let's talk about Leo, right? Leo is a zodiac sign that spans 30 degrees, right, of 360 degree circle. And that circle, there's 360 degrees, is called the ecliptic. Right? So the ecliptic is a band of stars that wraps around the earth. Right? And every circle, we know, for the most part, is 360 degrees. So we're talking a little math here. I know some of people that say they've listened have heard feedback that I got to get a pen and a paper. So grab your pen and your paper.
Yeah.
Right. So we can get into a little mathematics.
Yeah.
Right. So now, yes, and let me make this sidebar here. The sign of Leo, right, does not equal exactly 30 degrees in the night sky, right? As the constellation looks, right? It doesn't mean that, right? Aries is not 30 degrees. Pisces is not 30. None of them are 30 degrees. Libra is not 30 degrees.
Yeah.
Right? What we do is we take the way those signs are aligned within the ecliptic, and we cut from a certain point, and sometimes that point will overlap. The constellations will, but you will still have a consistency of where the constellations are connected to those particular signs, those star patterns, right? Because that's what constellations are. They're patterns of stars, and different cultures draw them differently, right? They don't, what we have is where the Babylonians and the Cometians used, right?
Yeah.
But there's different patterns, different ways to draw this. It's just connected dots. So in that culture, they connected dots, like in Chinese astrology, connected the dots different ways. But you'd be surprised that the fundamental backdrop and understanding of those same different patterns of connections have similar meanings. It is strange, right?
Yeah.
So that 360 degree circle, right? The sun moves, right? A consistent, right? 30 degrees, right? Every 30 days. It moves 1 degree per day. So that's kind of like our ability to time things, if you will. It's a timing thing. So within this 360 degrees, each planet has its own motion, its own speed, its own timing. Well, when we begin to look at things that are fundamental to understanding how time works, the first thing that was used was not the sun. Right? You can't even see the sun in a constellation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Can't see it. But what you can see which is the next most important timing mechanism, and for many ancient cultures was the timing mechanism, was the moon.
Absolutely.
And so, the moon really is kind of like, we can even use it to time. We can use it to time many, 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 many different things. A woman's menses can be timed through the moon.
Yeah.
The tides, high tides, low tides can be tied to the moon. Seasons can even be tied to the moon.
Yeah.
Right? There's a way that the moon will move, and based on how the crescent is, you'll know if it's rainy season or if it's dry season. So the moon is vast. All these different planets are vast. Venus has its own ability to time. In fact, Venus is even more precise than the moon or the sun. Well, except the sun. Venus is like a clock. It's a metonic clock. Literally, you could time everything to it.
Yeah.
It's that precise.
Yeah.
So, astrology is nothing but the study of time, but we use things to measure that time. And so the moon, right, being obviously the brightest, second brightest heavenly body next to the sun, right, the brightest in the night sky by far, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to keep track of it, just easier. And so ancient cultures, studying the stars at night, right, following the planet or the moon as it moves through the night sky, begin to notice that when it's in this particular pattern of stars, we notice a certain phenomenon, right? This is what astrology is. So the moon itself, right, like we said, it has a cyclical motion, right, that we can time things through. So the moon, right, and let me make this sidebar real quick. Yes, folks, there are 88 known constellations in the sky. Ophiuchus is a constellation that is between Sagittarius and Scorpio. Yes, the ancients knew it was there, but it was not used in astrology.
Yeah.
Right? The portion of Ophiuchus that is in the night sky between Scorpio and Sagittarius, it's a thigh. It's literally a sliver of a thigh, right?
Yeah.
Right? So we didn't use it because it's not part of the way timing works. There are 12 lunar months in a year.
Yeah.
All right. Now, there's different types of lunar months. There's a sidereal month and a synodic month. I don't want to get too far off track because the people will get a little lost, but we're going to talk about the sidereal month, right? And the sidereal month, what that means is that it takes the moon 27.32, and we're going to round it down to 27.3 days to orbit from one point with respect to a star to the same star or point again. I'll repeat that. The moon takes 27.3 days to orbit from one point with respect to a star to the same star or point again. So every 27.3 days, the moon will return back around to that same star position.
Yeah.
Right? Now, 27.3, we're going to round down again, right? We're going to round down to 27 and simply do some quick math and divide the 360-degree circle, which is the ecliptic, by 27. Each portion of the answer that we get is a portion that the moon moves through every day. And that answer is 13 degrees, 20 minutes. So, 13 degrees, 20 minutes is the portion of the sky that the moon moves through, right? Every day.
Yeah.
It takes the moon 2.5 days to move through one constellation, right? So if we're doing math, right? Each zodiac sign is 30 degrees, right? So that means it takes 2.5 days to move 30 degrees. So it only takes 1 day to move 13 degrees of that 30-degree portion, right? And we move 13 degrees, 20, 13 degrees, 20. We have 26 degrees, 40 minutes. That leaves us 3 degrees, 20 minutes to go out of to move from one sign to the next sign.
Yeah.
Right? So that means that each day, right? And it takes 27 days for the moon to move in that exact circle to come to the same point again. There's 27 what we call lunar mansions, or 27 nakshatras, right? So now, since we have a little bit of math, and I know folks are like, well, that doesn't all fit. Some pieces are missing. What about the 0.3, right? Well, the 0.3, right? We're going to talk about that in just a minute. So, 27 nakshatras, 27 lunar mansions. In India, the moon, right, has 27 wives.
Yeah.
And each one of those stations is considered one of his wives. So, and let me also say this, there is no difference between where the moon moves and where the rest of the planets move, y'all. I know a lot of astrologers talk about there's a difference between the lunar mansions and the actual constellations. There's no difference, folks. We have one band of stars that we use. We don't have two bands of stars.
Yeah.
We're measuring the same space around the Earth. That's why we called it a sidereal month, because we're measuring it from what? Star to the same point around to the same star again. There's not a separate set of stars that we're using. They're the same stars.
Yeah.
That's just a little sidebar for the astrologers that are out there that tend to try to disagree with the fact that the lunar mansions and the constellations are interlaced. They are. So let's talk about that a little bit. That when we talk about Leo has 3 portions, right? Each one of those portions, 13 degrees, 20 minutes, 13 degrees, 20 minutes, and 3 degrees, 20 minutes. Add up 13, 20, 13, 20, and 320, you get 30.
Yeah.
Okay. So, each time the moon moves one day, right? The moon has a different way of expressing itself throughout those 27 days, right? Meaning the moon is the active part and the constellation is the passive part. And when they come together, you have a cause and effect. So as the moon moves, right, the other planets move too, and they move through the same area of the sky called the ecliptic. There's not a difference. Right, I don't want to get too technical, but the moon moves 5 degrees up and down within the ecliptic, just like a serpent goes up and down. The moon goes up and down within a 5 degrees band.
Yeah.
When the moon and the sun are perfectly aligned within that 5-degree band, and it happens twice a year, you have what's called a solar eclipse. That's why it happens, right? So there's no difference between the way the stars, where they are. They're all on the same plane like a plate. It's just one is a little higher and it goes a little lower. and it comes still over on that line, the same line over and over and over again. So I make that point to say that there really is only one belt of stars that we're looking at. So the 27 mansions of the moon, right? 27 houses of the moon, 27 stations of the moon. There's other names for these, right? This is just an Indian term that we're using called Nakshatras, but there's other cultures that discovered it as well. And this is because math is the same across the board, right?
Yeah.
You know, math is math. 27 degrees, 27 days, 27.3 days is 27.3 days no matter where you are, right? But the Chinese also have, right, they have 28 mansions, because 27.3, you know, some people use that 0.3 as another addition too, so they'll say 28. Even in India, they'll say there's 28.
Yeah.
Right, but there really is 27, because 27 fits in a lot easier in light of the mathematics. It just does. The 0.3 adds up to 6.6 hours, right? Which that 6.6 hours at the end of Sagittarius, there's a little small space that they considered an additional, what we call nakshatra, which is called Abhijit. But we don't use Abhijit because for the most part, 27 fits a lot better into the way the planets move. All the planets. But that's just so you know, remember I said earlier, we're going to find out where that 0.3 is. Well, that 0.3 is within that little space, right? Of 3 degrees, about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more. So back to the discussion, in that the Chinese, right, have 28 mansions. Right? They're called the Siu, or night inns. And here's the funny part about it. The way they reckon it, or the way they find it, is based on a star. Right? It's based on a star. And that star is called Spica. Well, but this is the Chinese. Well, in India, they use the same star.
Yeah.
To reckon the whole zodiac. So see, cultures just begin to see patterns, and they just recognize that there's a consistency within the patterns. And these are cultures, of course, they may have interacted, but for the most part, the way they use the knowledge is vastly different.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
now there's another
one important thing in this is that just from observing the sky, and being able to come to these conclusions from actually looking at it from an astronomical perspective is plays a large role in why all of these cultures realizing the same thing, in that regard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You're right, man. There's a consistent spiritual / scientific, because our science wasn't separate from spirituality.
Yeah.
Right. It was one and the same. And so, when you begin to see that there's just this consistency, and here's another culture, Arabia, right? The Persian culture, right? Persian astrology, which is, much later than the Babylonian, and the Babylonian got it from the Sumerians, right? So they're kind of a line. They have a long line, right, of astrology.
Yeah.
But the Persians used what are called the 28 manzil, or the stations, right, or houses. So again, right,
yeah,
same thing. And so the 27 lunar mansions, right, it's also called another name in the Western sense. It's called an asterism. Right. You hear some people say, "Well, what's the asterism?" Asterism is the same, pretty much the same thing. Right. Aster, like the word aster means star.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a group of stars. This is how we begin to notice the patterns, is that within a constellation, you have a group of stars. Right? Well, getting deeper into this discussion, right, each nakshatra is basically just a star pattern, or it could be a star, one, let's talk about an example of a nakshatra or a lunar mansion that's affiliated with just one star. We talked about Leo earlier, right, brother?
Yep.
Okay. With Leo, the first portion, the first house, the lunar house, which is 13 degrees, 20 minutes, it's affiliated with the star Regulus.
Yep.
The star Regulus is at 5 degrees Leo. Right? So, it's one star. One star. Right? But it rules a whole nakshatra. It rules a whole 13 degrees, 20 minutes. Right? Now, the funny thing is that to go further into this particular way, we kind of delineate this, right? And I don't want people to get too sidetracked, but I want you to just keep in mind, right, that this nakshatra differentiates this type of Leo from other types of Leo.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm not going to get into what that particular portion means, but the name of it is called Magha. And Magha means the great. That which is great, grand, magnanimous. Right? So the type of Leo that what we think of Leo is kind of like Magha. It's grandiose, it's big, grand show, right?
Yeah.
Donald Trump, right? Right? Because his ascendant is in Magha.
Yeah, that's
bigger than you, right? Fits pretty well, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, you don't have to be biased or nothing like that, but my moon is in Leo, so I know a lot of Magas. Well, I don't know a lot. I don't know. It ain't a lot of just Leos running around like that. But it's a big distinction between the Maga and me. I'm Uttara Palguni. So it's you can see it. Use some similar things, but you can tell the difference. It's definitely a difference.
Oh, no doubt. Each Leo has its own essence. I mean, each portion, each nakshatra has its own essence. In fact, each nakshatra has such deep connotation that it by itself, when you begin to look at the planets and the placements in those nakshatras, that's when you really get to refine what those planets are doing in that star pattern called a zodiac sign.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about a nakshatra that is ruled by one star, where there's nakshatras that are ruled by multiple stars. For example, Kritika. Now, Kritika, right, is in Taurus, right? And Kritika, it starts in Aries, right? It starts in Aries at 26 degrees 40 minutes, and it ends in Taurus at 10 degrees. That portion of Taurus is called Kritika, right? And it's ruled or associated with the Pleiades. So these are stars. This is my point for making this segue here, that these nakshatras or asterisms are connected to a star or a group of stars.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Good. Now, moving deeper into how this works, this is a refining system. So we can take a piece of this particular, a portion of this zodiac sign, and get even more refined with it, right? And say, now this portion of Taurus has the disposition of being cutting, being sharp, being fiery. Right? See, the bull. What do they say about a bull when it sees what?
Red. It goes,
right.
It gets intense.
Right. So it can get heated. It can get fierce. Right. It can be downright belligerent.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this is that portion of Taurus. So you see how each one of these, right,
the red one
can begin to really, define it.
Yeah.
So each one of these nakshatras, right, as we defined it as 13 degrees 20 minutes, right? So we're taking a portion of this particular zodiac sign and refining it. Then we're going to take and say, well, you know what? 13 degrees and 20 minutes can be subdivided into 3 degrees 20 minutes. So now we're not only going to take and refine it into this little portion of the sign, we're going to take that portion and even further refine it into what we call a pada or a foot. And each pada is made of 3 degrees and 20 minutes. So each zodiac sign is each nakshatra, is 4 padas. So we're taking this portion of, let's say, right, Kritika, and we're going to say, well, the first pada, which is 3 degrees 20 minutes, it's not actually in Taurus, it's in Aries. So the end of Aries has some connection to those energies that are in Taurus.
Yeah.
And so that portion of that particular nakshatra is a very specific, pinpointing, accurate, detailed analysis of how that planet functions in that portion of that sign. So now we've gotten even more precise. And that's when the predictive ability begins to take some shape, because it's easier to say, in this portion, this particular manifestation of this energy is going to be just that. It's within 3 degrees and 20 minutes of arc, what we call arc, right?
Yeah.
That's very specific. So guess what? Now you might even have the same thing going on as someone else in the same nakshatra, but now I've even further refined it. So this is what we're doing with the nakshatras. We're taking a portion of a zodiac sign and getting real specific. Give another example. We're both United States citizens, right?
Right.
We both live in the United States. So we're going to have some fundamental similarities, right?
Yeah.
Well, the United States would be like the sign, right? But we live in different respective areas. You're in ATL, right? I'm in the Mile High, right? So in the ATL, right, we got a whole different culture, even though we live in the same country.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have a different way of talking, right? Different way of dressing, different way of even eating, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're still both United States citizens, right? Well, in Denver, they have a whole, right? Some places call it soda, some places call it pop, but it's still in the same country.
Yep.
Right? Well, your respective city would be like the nakshatra.
Mm-hmm.
My respective city would be like the nakshatra. Well, in the same city, in the same nakshatra, you can have different neighborhoods, can't you?
Yep.
Right? So in the city of Denver, right, let's say the city of Atlanta, better used, right? Because you got Buckhead, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got East Point, right? You got downtown Atlanta, right? These are all different areas of the same city. So now each area would be like a pada.
Yeah.
Each neighborhood would be like a pada.
Yeah.
Now, in that neighborhood, they're pretty much going to have very consistent things, right?
Yep. Yep. That's.
Buckhead's going to do what Buckheadians do, right?
Yeah.
Right? This is how we begin to understand what we're looking at in a right brain way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, indeed.
Right, so when you begin to really pinpoint these things and put the finite spin on it, then you can predict. Now, the nakshatras are deep. This is a vast subject. That's why we're going to take just a little bit of time to discuss it, because we'd be here for a whole 4 hours just to talk about all of the pieces of the puzzle, right? But we're going to talk about just some of the fundamental understandings of what it is, right? So a nakshatra, again, is affiliated with a star or a group of stars, each single one, right? And so when you begin to understand that, where the planet is placed, you can begin to research that star, and that star will then have the effect on that planet as if it has its own impact and energetic output on that planet's position. So you might have, again, one planet here, they're both in the same sign, but have very different outcomes because the stars are influencing them as well.
Yeah.
Right, and there's a system called Tara Bala, right, and that's a whole system where they measure the strength. Tara means star, right, and Bala means strength. So the strength of the star, or the strength of the planet, that in the proximity that it is in within the certain star patterns. It's a whole nother system within nakshatras that we use. I mean, this gets real finite. This gets real picky, right? But that's the only way you can predict with some degree of proficiency. Now, I don't know what Western astrology uses. I know they do lean into the 27 mansions and asterisms and things like that, but it's nothing like this, folks. Nothing.
I've heard of people using decans.
Yes, decans. They do. Mm-hmm. They do. And decans are different.
Yeah.
Because decan means 10, so you're taking each zodiac sign and just cutting it into 10 slices.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, to one slice of 10 degrees.
Yeah, 3 slices.
So then you end up getting, right, 36 decans in 1 year, or 36 decans out of the 360 degrees that we talk about. And that is another way to slice it, absolutely. Yeah. And it works, depending on what you're trying to see.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to slice this pie up, y'all. You'd be boggled. Right, but this is just the consistent way, and it's based on a planetary movement in the heavens, the way the moon moves. So this is very consistent and very precise, and it has so many deep meanings because the moon itself is so close to the body of to the earth. It has so much influence. Literally, the moon is an ascendant in astrology as well, so it is that potent.
Yeah.
And we'll begin to look at the moon's placements and just follow how the planets go in, because we're in the zodiacs, we're looking at the sun's placements, and the nakshatras looking at the moon's placements, but they go through the same pattern of the sky, same circle.
Yep.
So getting deeper into this, right, nakshatra literally means, right, it's 2 words, naksh, Naksh. It just means to get closer, right, or to try to attain something, to try to get closer to something.
Yeah.
Right, and tra, you've heard of the word tra. It's a word, you just didn't know it, but it's in different words that you've heard. Mantra, right? Yantra, right? Tantra. They all end in what?
Tra.
Tra is an instrument. It just means like a technique. So nakshatra is literally a technique to get closer, or to, this a technique of attaining something. Right? So it's literally affiliated with stars, right? When also you'll see sometimes as they say nakshatra, they're just kind of tied in to meaning star, but it doesn't technically mean star. It means the technique of getting closer to attaining your goal. Right? It's also called that which never decays. And the stars, they never decay. Right? They never change their real course. They're pretty much consistent. Right? So the planets change their course. The stars don't. Except through precession, of course. So, right? So this division of the zodiac, right? It just means a circle of stars, right? And it's actually, the nakshatra system is so fundamental in Jyotish, or in this type of astrology, that there's 2 other systems that are used to extract meaning from these nakshatras. One is called the Navamsha.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure a lot of people don't know what that is. Like, oh, no, Navamsha, yeah, my quote unquote relationship chart,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then what is called the Vimshatari Dasha system, right? And Vimshatari is called the king of the dashas, and the dashas are what we call your life chapters.
Yeah.
Right. So the nakshatras actually are tied directly into those two systems. So this is how crucial it is in this type of astrology, that the nakshatras have so much, they have a fundamental role in a lot of different things that go on with regards to this particular science.
Yeah.
Right. So again, and let's use another example, right? Sagittarius, right? Sag, right, has different energies, right? And let's just, before I go there, these things repeat themselves, y'all. There's a pattern that repeats itself over and over and over and over and over. And you just learn the pattern quickly so that you begin to ascertain, oh, that's why the dashas follow a certain planetary setup, right? Because the nakshatras are set up the same way.
Yeah.
Right. So you begin to follow patterns, right? And these patterns begin to repeat themselves. So every fire sign is going to consist of similar things, right, than other fire signs, even though they're different. So getting into that, right? The nakshatras, what they do is they give us a deeper access to the meanings of each one of the signs. It's just a deeper understanding, and it goes even deeper. But each nakshatra has like its own. So we talked about the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know there's a planet that rules that country. I mean, there's a president that rules the country, right? So, right, Trump is the president of the United States of America, right?
Yeah.
But you got a city that has a mayor.
Yeah.
Right? And then in the neighborhood, you have an alderman. Right? Most people don't, this is politics. You have an alderman or someone like a representative that rules that neighborhood. So it's the same way with the nakshatras. Right? The sun rules Leo. He's the president of Leo. He's the ruler of Leo. Period. There's nothing questioning that. But within the neighborhood of Magha, right, Ketu rules that neighborhood. Right? So within that neighborhood, you have another planetary ruler. The nakshatras are affiliated with planetary rulers. Right? The next neighborhood in Leo is Purva Falguni. And it's ruled, that neighborhood, that portion, that 13-degree, 20-minute portion, is ruled by Venus. The next portion, right, of Leo, which is the residual, which is 3 degrees, 20 minutes, it's ruled by the sun. So within that particular configuration of that zodiac sign, you have 3 sub-lords or sub-rulers.
Yeah.
Right? And so now we know, okay, well then the sun being the ruler of this, and then Ketu being the ruler of this, there's an agreement, there's a resonance and a dissonance sometimes between those two planetary makeups. And that's when you begin to notice the nuances and the differences of how that leonine energy is played out. For example, Purva Falguni, which is ruled by Venus, right? It has a whole different setup, right? There's almost a contradictory nature to it, in that Leo, right, And think about the lion, right? Think about the totem, the lion, right? It's very regal and royal, but it also can be very lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that portion of Leo called Purva Falguni has a lazy streak.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've seen it.
Right. Just kicking back. In fact, tying it in further, going deeper, each one of the nakshatras has a symbol that goes with it. So it gives us an even more refined meaning of that particular portion of that sign. And the symbol for Purva Falguni is a hammock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, come on, that's just the way it works is very phenomenal to me. Because a hammock, what do you do in a hammock?
Sleep, lay down, relax.
You chill.
Yeah.
Right? So Leos can have that disposition. Some of them, when the planets are prominently placed there, sun, moon, ascendant, they can be lackadaisical.
So it's like the king that likes to be, adorned and pampered and...
You got it, my friend. Exactly what that is. So now we know this portion of Leo. Oh, okay. So they like the good life.
Yeah.
Right. And they're givers, right? But at the same time, there's a sense of selfishness there too. Because it's about the king. What you gonna do for me? I'm the king. See, Magha is what he can do for the people. Now, it gets deeper and deeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really does. I mean, it's phenomenal the way this system is set up, right? There's even a devata or a deity that's associated with one. So now we got a symbol, we got a planet, we have a deity, right? So the deity that's associated with Purva Falguni is called Bagha.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what his thing is? Pleasure.
Yeah.
Enjoyment, merriment. The life of the what?
Party.
Because see, Leos like to shine. The energy of Leo likes to shine. It's just ruled by the sun. But this portion likes to party.
Yeah.
Have a good time. Good food. Good people. Sexual enjoyment. But it also makes good wives. Depending on what planets are placed there, how they're placed in the condition and all of that, the Lord, all those different variances, right?
Yeah.
But just understanding that energy is about those different things in the Leonine zone of the sky. This is when we begin to understand what nakshatras really do. Well, remember we said there's patterns? So every fire sign has Ketu,
Mm-hmm.
right? Has Venus, and has the sun as the rulers of the nakshatras of that fire sign. So Let's do it. Aries, right? The first nakshatra, right? is
Ashwini.
Thank you, brother. Which is ruled by Ketu. The next one is Bharani, which is ruled by Venus. And the last one is Kritika, we mentioned earlier, which is ruled by the sun.
Yeah.
Then we go to Leo. Same pattern. Leo has Magha, which is ruled by Ketu.
Mm-hmm.
Purva Falguni, which is ruled by Venus. And Uttara Falguni, which is ruled by the sun. Same thing with Sagittarius. Mula is ruled by Ketu. Purva Ashada is ruled by Venus. And Uttara Ashada is ruled by the sun. These patterns repeat themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So when you begin to see that there's a repetitious pattern, you see a rhythm, right? And how these things are expressed. And each one of these, right? Each one of the nakshatras, each one of its rulers is funneled through the main ruler of that sign. So, for example, Maharani, right? Maharani is called the bearer, right? Remember we talked about there's a god, a deity, a devata that rules each one. Well, the devata that rules Maharani is Yama, the god of death. right? But it's also, its symbol is called a yoni, or a womb.
Yeah.
So we have a theme here now in Aries, in the sign of Aries, 13 degrees 20 minutes to 26 degrees 40 minutes. But this particular portion of that sign is extremely fierce in getting things done. They can hold a lot of things. They can bear a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Right. This is the side of the warrior, right? That is literally driven to make sure something happens, to make sure he gets, or she gets, their goal accomplished, because it's in a cardinal sign, and cardinal signs are always about getting goals accomplished.
Yep.
You see how it has a certain, you can go all the way down, all the way into that particular portion of that zodiac sign and get real specific about what's going on.
You want to tell you something that's funny?
What's that, brother?
You know, you just said that, right? And you know, we got Tupac as an Aries ascendant, and he's Barani. And you remember what was his little acronym for nigga? Never ignorant,
Niggas,
getting goals accomplished.
Getting goals accomplished. Yeah, exactly. And you know, cardinal signs, they don't finish well. They start a lot of things, they don't finish nothing. Right? Typical pop, right?
Yeah.
So, right, these different portions of the zodiac signs, which are affiliated with stars, right? We can get into the very specifics of each one. And let's just say this, right? Each one has so many different layers, right? Each one has what's called a deity or a devata, right? A symbol, a planetary ruler, right? It has an animal that's associated with it. Literally, it's an animal that's associated with each one. So let's talk about Magha and Purva Falguni. Both of them are the rat. The animal for them is a rat.
Yeah.
Well, rats are very sexual animals. Very. Highly driven in that regard. Right? So if we know, for example, that the person has a planet that's there that's dealing in relationships, and it could be any type of planet. I'm not going to get into this because we'll get real lost, right? But this system is even used for compatibility, is what I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
Right. And there's many other things. You can't just use this one piece, but I'm just showing the fundamental basis of it, because it's actually even used for compatibility, right? We talk about there's psychological qualities, right? There's actual what we call doshas, which is vata, pitta, kapha. Each one of them has one of those, right? It has what's called a purushtartha, right, which is a aim of life, right? It has a caste. Let's talk about. Remember, we talked about we can stick with Leo, right? So the first portion of Leo is Magha, and literally it means the great, right? It means the great. He's the king, Leo.
Yeah.
But guess what? The caste for it is what's called a Shudra, or a worker, a servant. So it's telling you a king is nothing but a what?
Servant.
You see, it gets real deep when you get to understand, like, whoa. So it gets real deep.
Yeah, it is.
Right, we can go drill in. You know what I mean?
Yep. I mean, even the formation of, like, I mean, just using Leo as an example, like Maga is like the head of a lion. Purva Falguni is like the mid portion, right? And then Uttara Falguni is the hind legs, like the tail. Yeah, the you know. Yeah. So it's
I mean, you can't get no more refined. I mean, it works perfectly.
Yeah.
It really does. This is a phenomenal portion of, Jyotish, which is the proper term. Some people call it Vedic astrology. Some people call it Indian astrology. Some people call it Hindu astrology. The real term is Jyotish.
Yeah.
But in Jyotish, this is a very powerful and potent science because it's so interconnected with everything. It's almost like it's perfect. Nothing is perfect, but it's very close in the way it's used and if it's used properly. So, I mean, these, again, they have different things that go with it. They have a direction, a body part, right? And there's even a vowel that goes. There's a consonant that goes with each one of them. In fact, in India, they typically name you based on your moon nakshatra. So whichever, right? There's each one of the padas is a vowel.
Yeah.
Or not a vowel, but a consonant or a sound. I mean, it gets that specific, right? So, moving into some understanding here, right? This is when we begin to understand that the science is so pinpointing, right? That you literally have to study just this system alone for at least a couple of years. Just studying nakshatras, learning all the nuances, right? When we talked about Kritika, right? Kritika, one of its qualities, right? Not qualities, actually, the caste that it's in, right? Or let's say that caste. It's division that it's in. It's also, they have other things called division called Gana. It's a butcher. And you will notice every time that Kritika has a prominent planet in it, they have a very serious way to deal with things. They will not care to the point where they can hurt your feelings pretty good if a certain type of planet is there. Right? So you begin to notice stuff, just patterns over and over and over. Right? Venus in the sign of Mula, which is the first 13 degrees 20 minutes of the sign of Sagittarius, it's a butcher too. So when Venus is there, a lot of times those people have to learn their hard lessons through relationships. The symbol for, right, Mula is roots. Mul means, right, root. So it's literally rooted into something. Whatever planet is there, it becomes rooted in that. The star that's associated with it is actually the center of the galaxy. It's akin to the black hole that's in the center of the galaxy. So that tells you that this particular portion of Sagittarius is no joke. And it can be very beneficial. It can be very powerful, right? It's the part of the Sagittarian energy that literally is brutal with honesty. Sagittarian energy can be brutally honest. No tact.
Yeah. word vomit.
I mean, just bam. Like, well, did you have to say it like that? Yeah, I did. Which I don't mean no harm. But I mean, if you think about it, remember we said that the planetary ruler is K2, because it's the first 13 degrees, 20 minutes of a fire sign. And K2, right, is headless. It's the part of the dragon that has no head. So it can be just headless when it tells what it tells. No tact, no coot, no refinement. So to have a sensitive planet like Venus there can do a lot of different things. Now, of course, we have to look at everything else, y'all. Everything, right? To see what the real juxtaposition of it is. But just in general, just taking it, right, face value. Oh, my goodness. And our folks going to be looking, where's my Venus? Venus is right. Right. So I'm just saying, like, this is when we begin to look at how these planets are placed in different portions of the zodiac signs. That gives us a power of prediction and insight into the psychological underpinnings of individuals that scare some people.
Yeah.
Right. I've looked at some point. I'm like, yep, this is your mama. And you'd be like, how the heck did you know? Oh, yeah, 4th Lord is in there. Yeah, 4th Lord is right there in that nakshatra. Wow, brother, you ain't never lied. I didn't even look at the moon. I looked at the 4th Lord. Tell me all of that about your mom, right? I mean, this is how you can use it. It's so many different ways. It's so many different ways, right? So, this is what the nakshatra is. This is what it does, right? This is how it differentiates itself from the mainstream of what most people get and see in Western astrology. And again, these nakshatras cannot be just moved around like a slide rule. They're tied to each sign forever and ever. So Magha will always be in Leo. Mula will always be in Sag. Right? Ashwini will always be in Aries. They're tied to stars. The stars are tied to the to the signs. They're one and the same. They're just different slices of it to get us a more pinpointing understanding of it. And I say that because I know a lot of people out there that really disagree. And I hate to burst your bubble, but this is the way. I mean, even we talked about the Arabic system, right? So the Manzil, the 28 Manzil, are tied to the Pleiades, which is the same constellation as tied to Kritika. It's tied to the Pleiades.
Yeah.
So they even use stars to tie in the 28 mansions of their system to stars, and they connect directly to the signs. So it's one and the same system. It's just a different way of looking at each piece of the puzzle.
Indeed.
So, and it gets so deep that, nakshatras are so deep that they have special classifications. Some of them, right? Some of them, when you're placed in a certain position, right, called a Pushkara portion of the Pushkara nakshatra or a Vargadama nakshatra, it boosts the planets. Right? Remember you and I was talking about Venus, right? And wealth, right? Remember we was talking about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember he's like, well, Venus, man. I remember I said Venus is money. It's the coin, right?
Yeah.
Well, Venus at 29 degrees Virgo is debilitated.
Yeah.
But it's a Vargatama nakshatra. So it boosts the Venusian energies. Not to say that there's not an issue in love, the love life. That could be jank. But I'm talking about, and here's the thing, give y'all a little word. In fact, we'll probably throw it out this week. Let's throw it out this week. Jiva or non-Jiva.
Yeah.
We could take a line and go right down the middle on all planets, houses, signs, everything, and say Jiva is living. So any planet in the chart has a living aspect to it, someone that's alive in your chart. And then they have non-living aspects. The non-living aspects can be differently affected than the living aspects. So Venus, the non-living aspect is money.
Yeah.
And in Warren Buffett, his Venus is 29 degrees Virgo.
Yep.
Right? You see what I'm saying? This is powerful stuff, y'all. Right? His Vargadama Venus, relationships, man, hammered. But when it comes to money, right? You think Venus is debilitated, how's it going to get money? Because Virgo's all about the earthly realm. Right? So that's just to show you how these things can go deep into understanding a planet's position. Right? So does that elucidate? I don't want to go too deep, because when we start going deep into the way the padas work and all that, right? Because let's say the pada, okay, now, and I'll use that, and we'll kind of segue. We'll stop there, right? Because we're gonna make this show shorter today.
Yeah.
So let's say Venus is in. Let's say Venus is at 6 degrees 20 minutes Leo, right? Let's use another example. Let's use a better example. Let's say Venus is at 16 degrees, 30 minutes Leo. Right? That means Venus is in its own nakshatra, isn't it?
Yeah.
So guess what happens when a planet is in his own nakshatra? He's in his own hood. He's in his neighborhood. The country might not be so great.
Yeah.
He's in the land of the king. And Venus likes to shine just like the king does.
Yeah.
See, Venus in Leo has a whole different spin. But it's in its own neighborhood. It's chilling.
Yeah.
Right? So it gets some power to emphasize its meanings in that sign. So that means that the person might marry well. But they also may be high maintenance.
Yeah.
Because if you marry well, right, you can get the high maintenance. Do you see how it works in tandem?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now let's say, because it's at 16 degrees, right? Let's say, no, not 4, let's say 16 degrees. We're going to say, 16 degrees, 40 minutes. Right? Because we know up to, right, 13 degrees, 20 minutes is the first nakshatra. So 13 degrees, 20 minutes to 20 degrees, 26 degrees, 40 minutes is the next nakshatra.
Yeah.
Right? So remember, each pada is 3 degrees, 20 minutes. So the way it works is that these things repeat themselves when we talked about patterns. So from 0 degrees Leo, right, to 13 degrees, 20 minutes Leo, you have 4 padas. Each pada is going to repeat itself based on the sign pattern. So the first pada of Leo is Aries. The second pada of Leo is Taurus. The third pada is Gemini. The fourth pada is Cancer. The first pada of Uttara Purva Falguni is Leo. The second pada, right, is Virgo. So then Venus is in that second pada, even though it's in its own neighborhood. Well, let's say, I'm sorry. That's the neighborhood. I apologize, y'all. Retract that. It's in its own city. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because the nakshatra is the city. It's good in its city, right? It knows its city well. But the neighborhood ain't right. So he's in a neighborhood. Venus she's in a neighborhood that don't do so hot. It's the hood, it's the ghetto, and she's from right. What's a good name? What's a neighborhood? A Stone Mountain, right? Yeah. Stone Mountain, right? She's at East Point. She don't know how to operate at East Point.
Yeah.
Even though she's in her own city.
Yeah.
So now you have within what's called the Navamsha, which is another way we cut the chart, that person now has a debilitated Venus in the relationship chart. So now we can make some general assessments, right? Even though they might have married well, high maintenance, it can't be sustained.
Yeah.
So they end up, because of such of the high maintenance, because of such of the high probability of the self-image being so magnanimous and so self-important that it breaks down inside of the relationship. Then we could predict. Like, oh, well, yeah, I see, marriage is there, but you're going to have to let them shoes, them red bottoms go. You're going to have to let that Fendi bag go. You're going to have to right? You might have to go to Walmart and get that bag. And that person's like shocked, like, well, I can't, how could I do such a thing, right? Because they're so fixed. Remember, Leo's a what type of sign? Fixed sign.
Yeah.
See, these are all things that we begin to pull into the pieces of the puzzle and to extract what the meaning is. I didn't add in if Mars was there. I didn't add in if Saturn was there, because those things are all going to impact what the house it's in. What all those things are going to impact it. But this is just an example of how we can use it to really get to some real deeper understanding of it. Let's say Venus is in, what do you say, Mula? Let's say it's in 2 degrees Mula, or 2 degrees Sagittarius, first pada. Now Venus is in Aries pada. So that person's going to be super adamant in love and in relationships. They're going to get to the root so fast, they'll get to you so quick, but then you're like, well, hold up. We didn't even get to the, or no, I want to get to the depth of you. I want to know what's going on. I'm looking deep inside of you. And then that overwhelming fiery energy burns out, and they fall in and they fall out of love. So, these things are this is how you begin to take a stab at using it, because there's so many different other nuances, right? Now, if it's 2 degrees, and I'll throw a monkey wrench in there, if it's 2 degrees, right, and it's a good likely chance that it's the planet that's the lowest degree of the chart, now we're looking at what's called the Dara Pada. I mean, the Dara Karaka.
Yeah.
The Dara Karaka is the indicator for wife.
Yeah.
That's a whole another way to use the nakshatra.
Yeah.
You see, right? So, these are all different ways that the nakshatra system is used to get the depth of what it is that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And I mean, it goes deep. It goes deep. So does that, I don't want to go too deep, because, we get lost up in this, right? But does that give a fundamental, give like a fundamental idea of what it is that you're looking at?
Yeah, I think we gave a good, nice little foundation, for new people to understand nakshatras and stuff like that. I think, yeah. Because, we've made posts and different things like that, but I think, that this would be a show that people can go back to constantly, just to kind of refresh and, listen to a couple of times to gain more insight, into it.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Absolutely. The fundamental thing is that you're going to have fun by playing with your chart with this stuff.
Yeah.
So, guess what? Just a sidebar to kind of just titillate the folks a little bit. When we talked about Kritika, right? Well, Kritika, right, is affiliated with a deity called Kartikeya. Kartikeya is like the planet Mars. Because it fits perfectly, right, with the class that it's in, called a butcher. Right? So it's a butcher. Well, Kartikeya is a warrior. And then you got Mars in Kartikeya. You really need to take an assessment. And if it's at the end of Aries in Kartikeya, which then makes the planet what we consider old in Baladadya Vashta, that's a whole nother system. But it also makes it the Atma Karaka, which is the soul significator. You see how this begins to get so unraveling with this knowledge. That is profound to my person. Can't say for everybody else, but when I begin to look at it, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So the person has come to this life to learn to master their fiery, aggressive, forceful nature, that part of their spirit that literally has to be always guided by wise counsel and the need and necessity for rebalancing things that are out of balance. That's the purpose of having a Mars as a sole indicator. And then if it's in the sign of Aries, in Kritika, that person gonna have some problems, right? It's gonna try to solve everything through aggression, right? Through force, through adamancy. You start looking at it like, whoa, wait a minute. You mean, and then you start just, well, this is what's going on with you. And then don't let them be in the Dasha system or Dasha period of that planet. Whoa, boy. Then don't let that planet be aspected and transit by something. Oh, boy. Right? Then this is you see prediction coming alive, right?
Yeah.
Deep stuff, y'all. Deep stuff. But that's just to titillate the peoples. We will have further conversations, and then you'll have an understanding of what we mean when we say nakshatra, so then you can understand a little bit about what, right, some of those conversations that this brother and I will have when we do talk about, specifics around United States of America as a chart, or Bill Gates as a chart, or someone that might come on live where we talk about that person and give them a live reading, or delve into their horoscope right on a live podcast, and we talk about, your moon's in Shitra. Oh yeah, moon's in Shitra. And so your moon is in the Virgo side of Shitra. So yeah, you're definitely someone that can use musical instruments, or you're very detailed. You may work on computers, right? You may be an architect. All kinds of different things that go along with that placement, depending on the other factors, of course.
Yeah.
So you're getting an idea of what this system is, and some of the ways that we can use it. So I'll leave it at that. I hope this was enlightening for the people and answered some of the questions you may have about what nakshatras are and somewhat of how they work.
Indeed. Yeah, so I think this is another one of those good foundational shows, that I think they'll definitely appreciate this one. Indeed. Once more again, I want to remind you that this episode was brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group and Kala Purusha Astrology. You can find Push It Forward Media Group at Push It Forward PUSHITFWD on Instagram. Brother Rob, what's the handle for Kala Purusha, or your Instagram?
Yeah, the handle is Shechem Ra. You can find me on there. Sometimes you can even just type in Shechem. Might pop up for you. Pretty sure it will. But Shechem Ra is the specific tag. You can also find me on Facebook, again, at Shechem Ra, or you can hit me up at kalapurusha@gmail.com.
Indeed. So, this wraps up this show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and, make sure you hit us up, follow us, like us, help blow us up, so we could take it to the next level, and start really, getting this, this astrological conversation in the mainstream, start, really kind of, changing the way that people operate in life and understand life in general and whatnot. So, So, Brother Roddy, got any parting words, anything you want to drop on the people before we close this one out?
Just tune in next week, same time, same station. Cool.
All right. So, we'll be out next week, and, make sure you share this with somebody, and hit up Brother Ra, for some consultations and things like that, and we'll see everybody. We'll be here next week. All right, peace.